Dear students, I hope you have downloaded the video which I have uploaded in the previous session. And last class we have discussed about the symbols that we can use in an element, and DTD attributes we have seen, and we also have discussed about attributes with at least, and we have seen some of the attribute types we have seen. And also when we give the attribute and the value for the element, XML element, how it will behave, this is what we have seen. Okay, I hope you have downloaded the XML copy edited software where you can validate XML file with the help of a DTD. Okay, if you find difficult, you feel free to contact me and I am ready to help you. Okay, so we have seen the symbols like this. In the element we can use the symbols. In the XML element we can use the symbols like this. So we can use plus, asterisk symbol, question mark, pipe symbol and comma we have seen. And also we saw about the purpose of all these symbol. So when you put the plus symbol, that indicates that the child element can occur one or more times in the parent element. And when you put asterisk symbol, so the child element can occur 0 or more time. And if it is a question mark, the child element can occur 0 or 1 time. So the difference between star, asterisk and question mark is this. So when you put asterisk symbol, the child element can occur 0 or more time. When you put question mark, the child element can occur 0 or only 1 time. And you can also have a comma in the element. So when you use a comma in the element, that means it follows the sequence of a child elements. It gets the sequence of a child element. And also we can use a pipe symbol. Okay, pipe symbol means either of the child element can appear. Okay, either this or that, like that it can appear. That's what we have seen. And DTD attributes we have seen. The element can have attributes. Okay, so when you have element in the XML file, the element can have attributes. And we know that what is the purpose of attribute. So attribute gives more information about an element. Okay, so it gives more information about an element. So when you give values for the attribute, it always will be like this. Okay, attribute always in the form of a name, that is a attribute name, and it will have the value. So it will take this form, value, name, value pair. And DTD attribute with a at least we have seen. Okay, DTD attribute with a at least we have seen. And in that DTD attribute like C data, entity, entities, ID references, NML token, NML tokens, notations, and enumeration, all these the types of a attribute we have seen. And when you use attribute, how it will behave, or when you give the value for the attribute in the element, how the value could be. So you can have a required attribute, and we can have a implied type, you can have a fixed, and you can also have a default. So when it is required means the attribute must be specified. So the value must be specified for the attribute, that is a required, that is the value is required. Okay, if it is implied, you know that it is a optional. Okay, even if you don't give the value for the attribute, that is optional. Fixed means it cannot be changed. Okay, so when you fix the value of the attribute, later in the XML document it cannot be changed. That's why it is a fixed. And of course the default value, even if you omit the value for the attribute, it will take the default value. This is what we have discussed in the last class. Okay, and today we are going to discuss about DTD entities. Okay, DTD entities we will discuss, and finally we will end up with what is the drawback of a DTD. So actually we are discussing about the DTD, and the purpose we know. Okay, the purpose of DTD is to define the structure of the XML document. Okay, so when you use DTD, it validates the elements and attribute of an XML document. That is the main purpose of a DTD. So we can also have a schema to validate a XML file, but we are discussing about the DTD. So the DTD defines the structure of XML document, and also it validates the legal element and attributes of an XML document. That is the purpose of a DTD. And in that we have discussed element, we have discussed attributes, we have discussed one more thing is there, that is entities. DTD entities. So there are the entities are used to define, okay, entities. I'll take some pointer here. Okay, so the entities are used to define shortcuts to a special character. Okay, so the purpose of entity is to define the special characters. Okay, special characters within the XML document. What is the special characters? Maybe special characters may be like a @ symbol or like a copyright symbol. Okay, all these are all special characters. So if you want to include these special characters inside the XML document, you need to use the entities. DTD entities we need to use. So the entities are used to define shortcuts to a special characters. Okay, special characters like this. So there are 5 types of entities. One is internal entity, external entity, predefined entity, external non-text entity, and a parameter entity. So there are 5 types of entities. We will take one by one and discuss. Okay, so we know that what is the DTD entities. These are all shortcuts to a special characters within the XML document. So let us take the internal entity first. Okay, so the syntax. Okay, the syntax for defining the DTD entities. What is the syntax? It begins with the keyword entity, followed by entity name, and you can have optional keywords system or public, and we can have a entity content. Okay, just now we have seen the purpose of entity. Entity is used to define a shortcuts to special characters. So the content will go here. Entity content will come here. So here, if you see the syntax, entity is the tag name. Okay, entity is a keyword, is a tag name that specifies that this definition will be for an entity. That is the parser that this definition. Okay, the definition that we are going to give will be for this will be for an entity, and followed by entity name. Okay, entity name is the name by which the entity will be referred in the XML document. So the entity name that we can give, that is going to be referred in the XML document. And we have entity content. Okay, we have a entity content is the actual content of this entity. Okay, so of this entity, that is actually content. So when you use this entity name, that is replaced with the entity content. That is the data for which the entity is serving as a placeholder. And we also do keywords, system and public, which means they are optional. Okay, they are optional keywords. Either one can be added to the definition of an entity to include that the entity refers to the external content. Okay, so when you use a system or public, it tells the parser that the content, entity content, is from the external. Okay, external location, external source. Okay, the entity content will be from a external source. So this is actually the syntax of a defining the entity in the XML document. So the keyword, it should begin with the entity followed by entity name. These 2 keywords are optional. So when it should be used, when you refer the content, entity content. Okay, when you refer the entity content from the external source, then you can use the system or public, and followed by entity content. Okay, entity content. So entity is the tag, entity name is the name of the entity content. Okay, entity content is the actual content of the entity. Okay, so what are the rules to be followed? Okay, what are the rules to be followed when you use entity in the XML document? So an entity is referenced in an XML document by inserting the symbol and it should be ended with a semicolon. Okay, so when you use the name of the entity, Okay, when you use the name, when you refer the entity name, that should begin with a and symbol and should be ended with a semicolon. So when referenced in this manner, the content of the entity will be replaced into the XML document when the document is parsed and validated. What it means? So when you have an entity, okay, for example, entity name, assume that entity name is a name. Okay, so the entity should begin with a and symbol and it should end with a semicolon. Okay, what will happen when the parser parse this statement? So it is replaced with the XML content. Okay. It is replaced with the entity content, not XML content. It is replaced with the entity content. Okay, so this is how it is parsed by, it is validated by the parser. We will take one example. Okay, we will take one example to understand how the entities are parsed by the parser or validated by the parser. Just now we have seen the types. Okay, we have seen the types of entities. Okay, so we have seen the first type is a internal entity. Okay, internal entity. The internal entities represents data that is contained completely within the DTD. Okay, completely within the DTD. And if you look at here, this is actually is a DTD. Okay, this is a DTD. Okay, DTD, and this is XML file. Okay, this is a XML part. Okay, this is XML. And if you look at this DTD, okay, DTD element is a address. Yes, it is here. Address is here. Then element. Okay, element address that accepts a PC data. And if you look at this, entity is a tag name, and name is the name of the entity, and this is the content of this entity name. And I have another entity called company and one more entity called a phone number. So the values are here. So when you use in the XML document, when you use these entities in the XML document, the syntax we have seen. The entity name should begin with the ampersand symbol and it should end with the and symbol. So the name of the entity here is the name, and company and a phone number. So we have name, company and phone number. So when you open this or when the parser validate this XML document, what will happen? The entity names, okay, the entity names, here we have three entities, name, company and phone numbers, are replaced with the actual content, actual entity content. Okay, so that is a so we saw that the purpose of entity is a special characters, the content that you want to replace in the XML document. So that is a internal. So imagine that you have some text that you want to repeat at the end, at the bottom of all your documents. Let us say the text goes something like this. Okay, so thank you, please come again. So you want at the end of the page the message like this. Okay, so you may have a 10 to 15 page or even more pages you can have, and at the end of the page you want to display like this. What is that? Thank you, please come again. So instead of typing all the text every time you need to use it, what you can do, you could create an entity. Okay, you can create an entity called footer. Okay, so I'm going to create an entity called a footer. That way you just need to include the footer entity whenever you want to include this text. Okay, thank you, please come again, this text. So whenever you want to include this text, okay, whenever you want to include this text, just use footer alone. So now if you ever need to change the text, okay, suppose you want to change the text in the all the pages, what you have to do, you only need to change it in one place, that is in the definition alone. So that will be reflected in all the pages. And if you look at the example, you will understand. Okay, so here this is a DTD. Okay, DTD definition. Okay, this is element name, tutorial is element name. Here I have an entity. Okay, so the name of the entity is a footer. The content is thank you, please come again. So whenever you use this footer in the XML document, okay, so the entity, okay, the entity will be replaced with this content. okay, will be replaced with this content. So this is a way to create a entity. So if you look at this, the entities are inside the XML document, okay, inside the XML document, okay, inside the XML document. So that is why it is a internal. So I will show the example. I will show that, okay, I will show that. One second. So internal entity, if you look at this, I'll open this in a XML copy editor. Okay, XML copy editor. So this is actually this is a entity DTD part. It has a name, company, and phone number. Entities are here. Okay, and I'm going to refer the entities in the XML file. Okay, so if I open this in browser. Okay, suppose if I open this in browser, how it will look like? I'm going to open this XML file in the browser. So when you open the XML file in the browser, actually this is name and this is a company and this is a phone number. That is replaced. The entity content, entity names are replaced with the content. Okay, entity names are replaced with the entity contents. Is that clear? Okay. So now I will move on to the PPT. So if you open this XML file, this is XML file, this is XML file. If you open this in the browser, what actually you will get? You will get XML tutorial, then the URL you will get, and the next place, instead of this entity name, you will get a thank you, please come again, like that you will get. Okay, so the entity names are replaced with the content. Okay, replaced with the content. Now let us say the external content. Okay, external content. So external entities get their content by referencing it via the URL. Okay, so that means the entity will take the content from the URL, external URL. It's placed in the entity content portion of the entity declaration. So you need to use either system or the public keyword. Okay, so either the system keyword or the public keyword is used here to let the XML parser know that the content is from the external source. Okay, so when you want the entity content to be fetched from the external site, external source, you need to use these two keywords. Okay, these either one of these keywords you should use. Okay, system or a public. So external data could be anything from a normal parsed text in another file to a graphic or audio file to an Excel spreadsheet, which means so the external data, okay, the entity that could take maybe of any format. Okay, it may be a text file or it may be a video file or it may be a graphic file or it could be even a spreadsheet file. Okay, so it is a referencing. Okay, so the entity, the data that the entity could take of a different type, like any text file or graphics file, audio file, or even an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, and if you look at this is an example for a external entity. Okay, so if you look at here, entity, and the name of the entity is here. Okay, the content is fetched from this URL. Okay, the entity content, or what is the content? Bob is a entity name, and the content is fetched from this source. Okay, this source. And Nancy, okay, maybe information about Nancy is fetched from this source. Okay, and we have another element that takes this validation PC data. And if you look at here, I have used Bob, the entity. Okay, Bob entity. What will happen? The entity names are replaced with the content. Okay, replaced with the content. So this is how we can also refer the external content or the content of entity from the external source. Okay, so this is an example for a external entity. So we have discussed about a internal entity and a external entity. Then the third type of entity is a predefined entities. Okay, the word itself says that it is a predefined. Okay, predefined. So there are 5 predefined entities. Okay, there are 5 predefined entities. These entities do not have to be declared in the DTD. just make a note of this. These predefined entities need not be declared in the DTD declaration. Okay, so when an XML parser encounters these predefined entities, will automatically be replaced with the content that they represent. Okay, for example, the entities type predefined types like a ampersand, less than, greater than, asterisk, and a apostrophe. So like that you can have these predefined entities. So if you want to have ampersand symbol, you need this entity. And if you look at this, the entity name, okay, it begins with the ampersand symbol and ends with a semicolon. Okay, so less than, greater than, quote, apostrophe. Okay, so these are all predefined entities. And if you look at the example here, okay, if you look at the example here, so as I told you, predefined entities are need not be declared in the DTD declaration part. Okay, that could be directly used in the XML file. So here I have a flavor and vendor. Look at this, vendor. Then what is this? Ampersand symbol. Okay, so when you open this in browser, so this entity name is replaced with the ampersand symbol. That is a predefined symbol. So when you open this in browser, when you open this XML file, okay, when you open this XML file in the browser, actually what you will get, Ben and Jerry's you will get. So instead of this entity name, you will get this ampersand symbol. Okay, ampersand symbol you will get. So this is a predefined entities. And the fourth type is a non-text external entities and notations. Okay, non-text. What is non-text? It could be video or a image file, or it could be audio file, whatever it may be. Okay, non-text external entities and notations. Some external entities will contain non-text data such as image file. Okay, some entity will contain non-text data like a image file. So we do not want the XML parser to attempt to parse these type of files. Okay, the file contains, assume that the file will have an image file. So we don't want the XML parser to parse that file. So in order to stop the XML parser, we use the keyword n data. Okay, n data, that is in the notation. Okay, notation n data. So what is the syntax to tell the parser that this is a n data? Okay, not the non-text data. Okay, not text data. How to indicate? How to tell the parser? We need to use this non-text data keyword. Okay, so if you look at this, the syntax, similar syntax, but there is a difference. Okay, it starts with the tag entity, then my image, entity name, then system. You know that what is the purpose? It is from other resource, external resource. Okay, so what is the name of the file? Name of the file is my image.zip file, image file, and this is a non-text data. Okay, and we need to specify the file format. Okay, file format, that is a GIF format. So here, what is the purpose of this keyword nd data? So keyword is used to alert the parser that the entity content should be sent unparsed to the output document. So what will happen when the parser encounters this keyword? The parser will not parse this file, and it will be sent to for further processing. Okay, that is a main purpose. So non-text external entity, when you give, it should be given like this: entity, the name of the entity, then the content. Okay, content and the file format. Okay, file format we need to give. And of course, so if you look at the last part, okay, if you look at the last part here, GIF, it's a file format. Okay, it's a reference to the notation. Okay, that is actually is a reference to the notation. So reference to the notation. It is a reference to the notation. Then how to give that notation? Okay, how to give the notation, and there is a syntax for that. Okay, there is a syntax for that. So what is the notation? Notation is a special declaration that identifies the format of a non-text external data, so that the XML application will know how to handle the data. Okay, so notation is a special declaration. So we need to say that this is a special declaration. This is a special file. Okay, so for that we need a notation. It's a special declaration that identifies the format of a non-text external data. So anytime an external reference to the non-text data is used, a notation identifying the data must be included and it is referenced. Okay, and it is a referenced. Notations are declared in the body of the DTD and have the following syntax. So notation will have the following declaration in the body section of body of the DTD. What is the syntax? Notation, the name of the notation, system or public, then data format. It has to be in the DTD. Okay, it has to be in the DTD. So that is actually the syntax. So we will see that notation. What is notation? Is a special declaration. Okay, so notation is a special declaration that identifies format of a text, format of a non-text external data. Okay, so here just now we have seen entity. Okay, entity. The notation name is the name. Okay, notation name. Notation name is the name by which notation will be referenced in the XML document. And system and public are two keywords. Okay, system and public are two keywords. It's a keyword that is added to the definition of a notation. Okay, so it's a keyword added to the notation. System or the public is added to the notation. Okay, is added to the notation. Notation to indicate that format of a external data is being defined. Okay, is being defined. Just to tell that the data format is being defined. Okay. So you could also use the keyword public. Okay, you can also use a keyword public here instead of the system. Okay. So however, when you use it, public requires you need to provide an external URL to the data format definition. And finally, we have a data format. Okay, data format. What is this data format? It's a reference to the MIME type. Okay, MIME type, ISO standard or some other location that can provide a definition of a data being referenced. So that is the syntax. Okay, that is the syntax. And if you look at the example here, okay, if you look at the example here, so notation that should be this declaration should be mentioned. So notation, the name of the DTD is name of the format. Okay, name of the file format is GIF. So this is actually a data format image, and even that image is a GIF file. Okay, even that image is a GIF file. And entity employee photo system, then this is a name of the file or the content of this, okay, content of this entity. And end data notation is already here. Okay, notation is already here. That is of which type? GIF type. Okay, that is of a GIF type. Okay, this is how we can refer the external non-text entities. Okay, and of course already we have discussed about the entities. Okay, so here you have a picture equal to employee photo. What will happen? The content of this entity employee photo will be replaced here. Okay, will be replaced here. The file path, the file will be replaced here. Okay, then the last type is a parameter entities. Okay, parameter entities. The parameter entities are similar to the internal entities. Okay, so parameter entities are similar to the internal entities. The main difference between an internal entity and the parameter entity is that a parameter entity may only be referenced inside the DTD. Look at this. Parameter entity is referenced inside the DTD. Parameter entities are in effect entities specially for a DTDs. Okay, parameter entities only for a DTDs. And the syntax, okay, how to use the parameter entities. The syntax for internal entities we have seen. So it should begin with the ampersand symbol, then followed by entity name, then you should have a semicolon. This is what we have seen for a internal entities. So when you use parameterized entities, entity is a tag name, then one space, there is a space, and percentage symbol, space, followed by entity name and then entity content. Okay, this is actually the syntax. Okay, so if you see the syntax for parameter entity is almost identical to the syntax of a normal internal entity. If you look at this is a parameter entity parameter entity syntax, and this is a normal internal entity. Okay, so normal internal entity. So here you will have entity name followed by entity name. Actually entity name you will get, and when you refer in the XML file, okay, when you refer in the XML file, you will use the ampersand symbol and the semicolon. Okay, you will use these two in the XML. So entity name is here. That is actually the syntax, the difference between a internal entity and a parameter entity. Okay, similar. However, notice that the syntax, after the declaration there is a space. Okay, if you look at here, after the declaration of entity, so this is actually a declaration, there is a space. Okay, there is a space, there is a space, there is a space, and then a percentage sign, and then another space before a entity name. And if you look at the syntax, and before this entity name there is a space and percentage, and before this there is a space. So this alerts the XML parser that this parameter entity, and this is a parameter entity and will be used only in the DTD. So these types of entities, when referenced, what will happen, should begin with the percentage and should end with the semicolon. But it is, if it is in the case of internal, it should begin with the ampersand symbol and end with the semicolon. So if it is a parameter, you should begin with the percentage and end with the semicolon. And if you look at the example here, okay, this is an example. Suppose assume that you have element declaration as given below. Okay, so I have element residence and children elements like name, street, pin code, city, and phone. And I have apartment with the similar children elements, name, city, pin code, city, and phone. Then office, then shop. Okay, so now using parameter entity reference, the above example will be written like this. Okay, using a parameter entity. So entity, then what do we have? Percentage space, then percentage space, name of the parameter entity, then all the parameter will come here. Okay, name, street, pin code, city. Okay, and here another entity is here, contact, then phone number. Okay, so it is represented like this. So parameter entities are dereferenced in the same way as a general entity reference, only with the percentage sign instead of a ampersand symbol. Okay, so if you look at this element, okay, element. So if it is a ordinary entity, here you will have a ampersand symbol. Since it is a parameter entity, you need to use a percentage symbol. So percentage area and contact. Then apartment, area, contact. Office, then area and contact. Then shop, area and the contact. So the parameters are here. Parameter for a office, shop, everything is here. Okay, so this is how we can use parameter entities in the XML document. Okay, so there are some more DTD directives. Okay, DTD directives. So these DTD directives are often used with the parameter entities. Okay, these are used with the parameter entities. There are two types. There are types like ignore and include is there. Include. What is ignore? Okay, ignore means what will happen. So when developing or updating a DTD, you may need to comment out the parts of DTD that are not yet reflected in the XML document that uses the DTD. You can use a normal comment directive, or you can use a ignore directive. Okay, ignore, which means it is ignored by the parser. So the example is here. So what will happen? This is the part of the DTD will be ignored by the parser. Okay, so we can use a ignore. Okay, ignore. So if you give like this in the element, that is not correct. Okay, so that is not correct. So you need to give with the separate keyword ignore like this, not like this. Okay, not like this is invalid. And one more thing is, one more directive is there, that is a include. Okay, so this include directive marks declaration to be included in the document. So this is the part of the DTD, include. Okay, so if you want to include this DTD, you can use this directive. Okay, and how we can give comments within the DTD. Okay, how we can give comments within the DTD. Comments can also be added to the DTD. So the syntax is this. Okay, the syntax is this. With the DTD, or just like a comments in HTML. Okay, so this actually is a HTML comments. Okay, HTML comments tag. So what will happen? Everything between the opening tag. Okay, everything between the opening tag and this end tag. Everything between the opening tag and the closing tag is a comment. Okay, that is a comment. So this is an example. What will happen? Everything between this is comment, and this is actually is a comment, and this is a comment. Like this, we can also include comments in the DTD file. Okay, we can include comments in the DTD file. For that, it is enough to use a HTML comment tag. Okay, HTML comment tag. So what are the drawbacks of DTD? Okay, what are the drawbacks of a DTD? So DTD does not support the namespaces. Okay, you cannot have the namespaces in the DTD. There can only be a single DTD per document. Okay, that is another disadvantage. There can be only a single DTD per document. It is true that there can be internal and external subset of DTDs, but there can be only a single DTD referenced. Even if you can have a internal and external DTD, but what will happen? Internal DTD will override the external DTD. So there can be only a single DTD is referenced inside the XML file. It supports only text string data type. Okay, DTD supports only text string data type like a PC data. Okay, PC data, text string data type. It is not a object oriented. DTD is not object oriented. Hence, the concept of inheritance cannot be applied on DTDs. And it will have limited possibilities to express the cardinalities for the elements. We cannot have cardinalities for the elements, XML elements. So these are all the limitations in the DTD file, DTD. Okay. So with this, I will stop. I have created a question, quiz. Okay, I have created a quiz. Kindly go back and recall the presentations and try to answer the quiz and try to find out the answers for the quiz. Okay, I will today evening, tomorrow morning. Today evening I will open. From tomorrow onwards, you can take the test. Okay, so there are about 25 questions are there. Just try to understand the question and provide the answers. So for that, you need to go through the previous presentation, which means including this presentation. Okay, so thank you. We will see in the next class with the new topic. So today we have discussed about only the entities. Okay, DTD entities we have seen, and some directives we have seen, include and ignore we have seen, and how we can include comments in the DTD we have seen, and finally we have discussed about the drawbacks. Okay, so thank you. We will see in the next class.